Robin Williams, I mean, who doesn't want to work with him, is such an extraordinary talent, unique, no question. Have no hesitation to use the G word. He's definitely a genius. There was a way that he worked with comedy that no one had done and we'd never seen before, and acting, and he brought a very, very profound humanity to his work. And so, you know, when we wanted to do Happy Feet, we had two or three voices we wanted, and who else but him, and you know, and then to have the privilege of working with him, which is extraordinary. I mean, to see the way that mind worked and to sort of observe it very intimately was absolutely fabulous.
What would be fantastic is if you can give us a little insight to how that his mind did work, because I was going to ask you about his genius. It's a word I would rarely use, but I have to say, I think it's, he was a genius.
Oh, Robin was a genius, there's no question about it. In fact, we often joked that they should do some imaging on his brain, because we'd see a lot more synapses in whatever creates creativity, as it were. The way that he was able to sort of put things together so quickly, like a supercomputer, and they would come out perfectly formed and complete and extended. And you'd think lines that we would take, for instance, ages and ages to write, he would build on and improvise far better than we could as writers. In fact, on the first trailer of Happy Feet, every single line was his, and it was improvised rather than we writing it. What you'd do is you'd start to work with him, you'd lay down the scene, you'd interact with everyone else, the other actors, and then once you felt you'd got what you needed, you'd just let him go, and then he'd bring gold. And I think what everyone saw in his work was also what everyone saw, what Robin was. I mean, he was full-hearted, he was Herculean in his effort. I mean, he was a big, big soul, and that was what it was like, you know, when he wasn't performing. He profoundly intellectual, surprisingly so, and he would be quite amazing in his conversations, because he knew a lot about a lot of things. So you could get him you'd find him on a discourse on something, and no matter what it was, he knew about it. He was very humble in his conversations and in his dealings with people. And I think that's one of the things that informed his work. So that tremendous humanity that came out, completely uncensored and whatever, but ultimately very, very wise and powerful. It's very hard to talk about him, because to see that life force, it was so immense, to be absent now. It's really hard to grab hold of. I mean, I don't know anyone who had such a powerful energy. I mean, just to sit and work with him, he would go on and to the point of exhaustion, where he'd be sweating enormously. You could see it in his live shows. And then just when you thought he'd sort of collapse, like at the end of a big football match or something, he'd just pick himself up and go in harder. And then when you'd finished, he was still able to do that. It was very open and generous and very warm and very gentle. It's, you know, and I don't think someone would have had the length of career that he had unless he had all that to give. And the fact that it's somehow gone is really, you know, it's, yeah, the fact that it's gone is just hard, because you know he had so much more to give. I'm sure that everyone who's worked with Robin wanted to work with him again, and no doubt had other projects going. I mean, there were things we talked about doing in the future, but I'm sure that applies to absolutely everybody. He's one of those guys. He was very fit. He did have a heart operation, a valve replacement, but he was back to cycling and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, Robin's gone.
I had a quick look at a video of you and Robin Williams together promoting Happy Feet too, I think, and you're sitting and you're just beaming. You're very happy, and he's riffing and making these jokes as you go. You just seemed happy to be in his presence. Is there a behind the scenes story that you could share with us about something that he did or on the set, or is that too hard a thing to reflect on?
There's so many moments. I mean, that was the extraordinary thing. Robin was someone that should have had a camera on him all the time, because he would burst into song, and he would improvise a song. The melody, the lyrics, the structure of the song was all there, and you'd say, well, "Where'd you get that from?" And he'd say, "Oh, it just came to me." The very first time I ever met him, I was leaving a restaurant, and he was in a car park, and he started opening the door for people. He knew the people I was with, and he played out this whole thing about being the valet and driving the car and whatever, and it was hilarious. And that was just him in a dark car park, So he should have been one of those people with a camera on him all the time, and it would have been comedy gold.
He was quite political in his stand-up, particularly. Is that something you had thought about or access to? Was he a very political person in real life?
Oh yes, he was deeply political. In the sense that he really made it his business to understand what was happening in the world. He was he had a dazzling intellect, and he was able to sit and talk about anything at any time. He was a very caring of people. You'd walk down the street with him. If he saw a homeless person, he'd start just improvising something with them, make them laugh, make them feel a bit better. It was nothing for him to slip them some money, but just generally pick people up. I think he was very, very empathetic and big, big. I mean, he could be able to embrace everybody. He could embrace the whole world. He was very humble. That was the other thing. He was an extremely humble person. There's no sense of celebrity or whatever. And he was driven to make people laugh and bring joy. I mean, he'd do anything to make people laugh. But there was never any sense of celebrity or ego. Just absolutely none of it. He was like probably more than anyone else I'd ever worked with. That humility, yeah.
I think it was Will, the Australian comedy actor, who went to his stand-up show, and he walked out and someone asked him outside what he thought. He said that was a masterclass.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, that was the big thing about Robin. I mean, all other comedians saw him as the master. And there was that fraternity of comedians, and the affection with which they all addressed each other, and the admiration they had for each other. That is a clan, that comedic clan, and it's worldwide, and they recognise when someone just has that genius that he had. We see it as audiences, but they realise it's craft. It's not just a band, and it's just someone just going out and doing their shtick without any structure or deep thought. I mean, ultimately, it was bedded into something authentic and substantial, and that's why he could go out and riff off that stuff. But go back and look at his stuff, and you just see just how brilliant it is, and sustain. That was the other thing. It's one thing to come up with one gag, but to sustain it and keep it rolling, a big thing to do.
This is a final question. I hope you don't find it cliche, but let's think of it as a classical question. His legacy. What would his legacy be?
Robin Williams' legacy, just a force of nature, the like of which we've never seen before, and did something probably that the whole world needs more than anything else, is to fill our hearts with joy.